how
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us in Rappler Talk. So it's no secret that millennials are driving our economy today. The average age of the country, after all, is 23. So it's no secret that firms and marketing agencies are trying to target them. But what about the millennials themselves? How do they deal with money? How do they see money? And to what end do they use it for? So joining me today is Vince Rapisura, a professor from Ateneo and the author of Learning Wealth, Successful Strategies in Money Management. Hi Vince, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here, Chris.
Great. So could you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, my book is about personal finance. I write about a lot of my experiences on money management, how I was able to establish businesses and put some investments for passive income. And my intent really is to capture those who are intimidated by the technical jargons of finance so that they'll be able to relate more and hopefully they will take action in terms of improving their personal financial habits.
I have to ask then, the people who are intimidated, as you said, by by financial technical jargon, is that mostly younger people, millennials, I guess? Or does it run the spectrum?
I think it goes to all the generations, I guess. Except that millennials, I think, are more comfortable in terms of knowing these technical terms because they have the internet and they're tech savvy, so they are able to access information more.
That always works out. So before we delve into it, I just have to ask you, because everybody has a different definition of what a millennial is.
Yeah.
How do you define what a millennial is?
Okay.
And I hope I fit in.
Yeah, so millennials, I define millennials as people who are aged 18 to 35 years old. Generation X would be 36 to 50, and those that are greater than 50 would be the baby boomers. So for me, I was born 1978. So
You don't look it.
I'm at the tail end of the Generation X, and that's why I'm able to relate also to the millennials.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first off, I guess, how do millennials perceive money? How do they view money compared to their parents or older generations?
Yeah. Before I answer that, Chris, I'd like to give a context on the financial literacy level of the Philippines first.
Please, please.
Standard & Poor's Ratings Services actually conducted a financial literacy level for 143 countries worldwide. And it's no surprise, we ranked low. We are 117 out of the 143. And we only have 25% financial literacy rate. When we broke down, I took a look at their data. I was expecting that millennials would really emerge as the generation that would have the higher financial literacy level.
Breakthrough, I guess.
Yeah, but to my surprise, it's the Generation X that has higher financial literacy level at 33%, while baby boomers and the millennials, they're at 20% financial literacy level. Yeah.
So why do you think that's the case? It's surprising even to you.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't really thought about that, no. But I think it's also because millennials are more attuned towards consuming things rather than planning for something productive compared to the older generations. So maybe that's the reason why for the lower financial literacy rate.
This is kind of like the living in the now.
Yes.
Sort of. So what do millennials generally spend on? I guess based on your
yes.
observations.
So millennials actually spend for experience. And when with experience, I say an example would be traveling, going into food trips, immersing into cultures, buying clothes and gadgets. But what's also interesting is when we took a look at the consumer patterns of millennials. Millennials would like to buy products or get brands that are socially responsible. So that's one positive that we found out. They want brands to be an expression of their lifestyle, and they want to be
and
engaged.
their beliefs, I guess.
Yes.
Like, green or saving the environment or being like sustainable and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So they want to influence the brand. So that's what millennials are. That's their spending habit.
Yeah. So I mean, to be honest, it all sounds fantastic. You know, like see the world, improve yourself, and improve the world while you're at it. But what happens at the end of the day? Is it fair to say that at the end of the day, like there's less savings, I guess, compared to the older generations?
Yeah. Well, we actually call this the YOLO culture, right? And then the fear of missing out also. So millennials, actually, what we found out when millennials access loans, they use it for consumption. So they use credit cards to travel, to buy gadgets, to buy clothes. Whereas for the older generations, we get loans for housing, for cars, and
more like for investments.
Yes,
I
and
guess.
for productive purposes as well. So in terms of savings, we find that there's still so much needs to be done across the generations, because 85% of Filipinos don't have adequate savings for emergencies, that is.
Yeah.
So
emergencies like falling sick.
Yes.
Disaster, I guess.
Yes, yeah. And our suggestion there is to have at least 9 months equivalent of your expenses for emergency savings.
Emergency savings.
Yeah.
What I found interesting about what you said earlier was that you're saying they have access to credit, you know, that they use for consumption and things like that. You know, in a developing country like the Philippines, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine the older generations didn't really have that kind of access to credit. So.
Yes, the financial markets were not developed yet, especially during the time of the baby boomers. So they had the limited access to loans from formal financial institutions. While for us, the Generation X, the financial markets and commercial banks have started to develop and craft loans that could be easily accessed. But
the
now,
lower global interest rates makes consumption.
And for millennials, it's actually easier for them to access credit now. But the difference is, for example, what we observe, if you graduate from college, it's easy for you to access credit cards. And before, during our time, you actually look for and purposively apply for a credit card. Now it's the other way around.
They
It's
look
the
for you.
yes, the credit card companies actually are targeting.
They send you emails, they text you, they call you at all amounts of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Not very different from the US then. So would you say then that, how do I put this? Would you say then that it's necessarily a bad thing to have access to all this credit? Or would you say that like we need to temper that with some responsibility perhaps?
Yeah. Well, what I always say with credit is that it is a double-edged sword. So it could make you poor if you don't use it properly, and if you use it properly as a leverage for productive purposes, then it could actually make you rich. So credit is not really bad if you're able to use it properly and productively. It's bad if you don't use it productively.
And also if you end up falling into a debt trap.
Of course, yeah.
Could you go further on what would you define as, or what would you recommend for using credit or getting loans for your future self, I guess, to
Yeah.
invest in yourself?
Yes, for example, you could get a loan and invest in properties that could generate rental income in the future. And that rental income could already be your passive income that could finance the experience that you like to travel, and to get the gadgets that you want. But the key there is first to save, invest, and then spending would follow after that. And loans could actually be a tool to be able to beef up your passive income and investments.
So buying or investing in assets, I guess, that
yes.
help you sustain that lifestyle.
Right, yeah.
How about for other forms of investing? So we can invest in perhaps like you said, hard assets like real estate or
Yeah.
apartments. You can generate rent.
Yeah.
But how about for, like you said, you also need savings for unexpected circumstances. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking perhaps like insurance.
Yes,
or-
yeah. Insurance also. What we found out in our research, about 55% of all the generations, so millennials, Gen X, and the baby boomers have life insurance with them. But let me clarify,
55%.
it's quite
That's
high
pretty, yeah.
because the market research that we did focused on mostly those that are college graduates. So
I see.
it's quite high at that level. So for life insurance, what we really suggest is if you don't have dependents, it should be equivalent to about 10 years of your salary. And if you don't have dependents, it's 3 years.
3 years.
But I mentioned this in the context of getting term insurance for protection only.
Term insurance just for protection, not
Yes.
to act as like a pension fund. I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. How about other forms of insurance, say like medical insurance and things like that? Would you
Yeah.
recommend that as well?
Of course, I would recommend to go into medical insurance, especially if you plan to get married in the future. It's nice to start young with medical insurance because your premium would be low, and you would carry that low premium as you age.
As you age.
Unlike if you start when you're already a bit older, maybe
Yes,
at
the
40s
premium is
or
always
50s.
higher because the risk of getting sick is much greater.
Yes, and they won't cover your pre-existing conditions.
Oh, that's true. So, that's a lesson. Like before anything happens, heaven forbid,
Yeah.
get insurance.
Right.
Do you have data on default rates? I guess in terms of credit, like what happens if you do on the off chance that somebody falls into a debt trap? What is the best way to claw themselves out of it?
Well, the first thing that they need to do is to stop getting into bad credit. So stop adding to your credit, and then you also have to do lifestyle check. And then one thing that you have to do is to create this payment plan to get rid of the bad debt. And it's really lifestyle change that's going to help you to get out of debt. Yeah.
Do you considering like most people or most millennials go for credit or spend their money because it's part of their lifestyle. Do you see a difference or anything unique in the Philippines as compared to how millennials abroad spend their money? Are there any big changes that jump out really?
Well, I haven't really seen we haven't really studied the millennials outside of the Philippines, so we only focused our study here for Filipino millennials.
But so trips and brands and things like that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's still, I guess if you take a look at social media, that's what pops out of your Facebook or your Twitter accounts, right? So,
especially
yeah.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
You go on Facebook and Instagram, and everyone seems to be having like a
But-
fantastic time. So.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily bad to have this kind of aspirations if you really like it. But for me, you really have to have that financial discipline to establish your passive income first to finance those wants. The lesson really here is a tough balancing act between living the now and setting aside something for the future.
Okay.
So it's good that you experience this now because you have the energy and all that, but what I would suggest is to wait a little while, build up your investment portfolio first, and use the passive income from that investment portfolio to finance your wants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aside from establishing that or working on that discipline to really build up your savings or build up your investment portfolio, what are some of the other challenges that millennials face? Just like off the top of my head, I would imagine like you when you graduate from college, you get into a job and you don't necessarily have that high of an income to start
Yeah.
off, which is
Yes.
probably what drives people to get credit cards and,
That's
and
true.
loans in the first place.
Yeah. Well, the other challenges that we see is that right now there are really a lot of options available for millennials, unlike to us before. Let's say we talk about vacations, we're limited to Luzon practically because air travel was still expensive that time. So because of the advent of a lot of options and choices, millennials have higher temptation to access wants or to get into consumer debt. I think there's also lack of education in terms of taking on investing risks. No? They would just jump into buying stocks or buying into these financial products without really appreciating
The nuances.
yes, the nuances and really understanding the details of these financial products.
So for a millennial just starting out in their careers, I guess, what would you recommend to start them on the long road to financial independence, I guess, and like investing wisely?
Yeah. You know, it may sound funny, no? But in personal finance, we always start with knowing yourself, you know, taking a look at what you need and what you want. And then if you're able to do that, then you can come up with your investment plan, and your the financial products that you choose should be able to match your investment goals in your financial plan. I would also suggest that millennials start to save and invest early. Albert Einstein said that the greatest invention of man is really compounding interest. So, if and millennials, you have the time on your side.
If I'm not mistaken, it could also be a weapon of mass destruction, right?
That's true. Yeah.
No, but
So if you start early with compounding interest, it could actually bring you great wealth in the future. I would also suggest that millennials start small, but start dreaming big as well. Don't be intimidated by having very grandiose financial plans. You can start with 500 pesos a month in terms of savings. In a year, you have 6,000 pesos, and with that amount, you can already open a mutual fund bank account or an investment with the stocks. No, but the key really is to educate yourself first about all these things.
And by right now with the really low interest rates in terms of ATM accounts, deposit accounts, doesn't really make sense to
save.
Well, not to save, but just to keep it in the bank.
Keep it in the bank.
So should you still? I guess you should still make money work for you. I guess.
Yes. Well, if you save it in commercial banks that give low interest rate, then the purpose really just is for liquidity and to access it for emergencies. No, but for investments, and I think this is the development worker or social entrepreneur talking in me. No? I espouse and I really promote savings, getting time deposits in rural banks. Why rural banks? Just limited to the PDIC guarantee so that you have the insurance protection from PDIC. And if you invest in rural banks, you actually help the local economy. You contribute to the local economy. And they also give higher interest rates, about 4 to 6% per annum.
Yes.
And one key also is for rural banks, if you put time deposit there, 5 years plus 1 day, it's tax-free.
Oh, wow.
So
you get the high interest rates, you get tax benefits, and you also have, like you said earlier, millennials like to spend to justify their lifestyle, right? Or to sort of incorporate their lifestyle. So you're also helping out if that's what you believe in. And I imagine most of you believe in development. Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the key really is to educate yourself before jumping into any of this. It's something that one of our commenters, Jennifer from Facebook, said it would be nice to to have these kind of financial literacy subjects like taught in high school or in college.
Yes, yeah.
Are we
Moving towards that.
Moving towards that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be of interest to you that we're helping out a high school in Cavite right now. It's called the Sisters of Mary Schools. We are helping the sisters there, the nuns there, integrate financial literacy into senior high school.
Oh, wow.
So we're helping out in the integrating it into their curriculum. And I also know that the Department of Education is very active in terms of integrating financial literacy in the curriculum. Yeah.
How about there's also like the advent of technology is kind of changing, shifting the financial landscape.
Yeah.
You know, now you have all these micro loans, especially
Yes.
the MSMEs and SMEs. How to best take advantage of that? I mean, there's so many different options available now.
Yes. Well, the key really is now that you have a choice, it's actually a measurement of empowerment, or if you have a choice, because it becomes a buyer's market. So all you have to do is to determine which option best, which of the options would best help you achieve your financial goals. And it would be tailor-fit and customized to each and every one of us. So what may be good for you may not be as good for me, and what may be good for me may not be as good for you.
Do you have off the top of your head one way that like a millennial can take advantage of some of these new digital platforms?
Well, you can actually with a small amount you can open say an account for a mutual fund or other areas. In terms of technology also, you can enroll yourself into online platforms, community groups that talks about investments, savings, and the proper use of that real estate. You can also, like for me, I enroll in free courses in Coursera to educate myself in more about finance.
About finance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go all the way up to all of the Ivy League schools and see how the Wall Street hedge fund managers do it, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, like, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, you can also sign up online for a PSE account now, a Philippine
Yes.
Stock Exchange account.
Yes.
So if you want to dip your toes, I guess, get your feet wet into trading stocks, it's
Yeah.
probably one way to go as well.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, I guess. So, like you said, the majority of millennials kind of live in the now, with less savings, I guess, than their parents and generations before them. Are you worried at all? I guess to be perfectly blunt, are you worried that when they grow up, you
Yeah.
know, they may not have any nest eggs?
Right, yes. That's a bit worrisome because the profile really of millennials is that they don't have enough emergency savings. They use debt for consumption and not for productive purposes. And that's a double whammy, in terms of laying out a good future or a comfortable future for you. So yes, there's a lot to be done in terms of educating the millennials to encourage them to save, invest, and get insurance. Yeah.
So I guess so the economy right now is fueled by consumption. So for the general economy, it's a great thing right now. But later on, we just gotta hope, I guess, that like the economy keeps producing. I guess that there's still that sort of efficiency.
Well, but millennials can also take advantage of that strength in terms of consumption. They could create businesses, right, and address the needs of these consumers, and in that manner, then they're able to create wealth by themselves. And what we've also seen in terms of taking risks, millennials are more comfortable in taking risks. The most conservative would be the baby boomers, and my generation would take calculated risks. But millennials are more
just like
comfortable.
headstrong, like jumping.
Yeah, that's why a lot of education needs to be done for them.
But I mean, the investment environment is much better
Of course.
right now than it was before.
Yes.
So it also helps out, I guess.
Yeah, it's also easier to access finance if you want to put up startup enterprises. It's unheard of during our time.
Do you have like a ballpark figure of some of the interest rates for loans that
Yes,
that
for-
they can expect?
Yeah, if you get consumer credit from credit card companies, it could be 2% per month to 3.5% per month, and that's not even effective rate. I think that's the flat rate.
That's the flat rate.
Yeah, if you get a personal loans for cars, it would be about 6 to 7%. The same is true with the housing loans. But housing loans are diminishing balance, while car loans are typically flat also. Yeah, so these are the interest rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
But remember, guys, as Vince said, cars are depreciating assets, while houses you can rent them out and they're productive assets.
Right.
So I guess just to wrap up, what for the millennial who who's watched this, who's inspired, who really wants to start on that road of financial independence, financial well-being, what would you say they can do right now, like right now?
Yeah. Well, as the title of my book says, no, it's learning wealth, and its tagline really is ang pagyaman na pag-aaralan. So I suggest that millennials study personal finance, study investment, study savings, insurance, and the use of debt, because that will arm them to prepare for a very good financial future. It will also help them to balance enjoying the now and setting aside something for the future.
And the way they do it, it wraps up their whole lifestyle as well.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you very much, Vince, for joining us and helping out people who really want to learn about financial literacy. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Do you actually help you do seminars, right?
Yes. On October 14 and 15, we will have a financial literacy training in Ateneo de Manila University. And for those millennials who are interested into going into business, we have a course on how to make a business profitable. And this will be held in different areas in the Philippines. So in Cebu, in Samar, in Davao, in Ateneo de Davao, and also here in Ateneo de Manila. You can check our website. It's learningwealth.org, or you can check also my Facebook page, Vince Rapisura. All the details of these trainings are there.
Okay, so if you want to start on that road to financial independence, that's one way to start. That's one way. So thank you very much for joining us, guys. I'm Chris Schnabel, and this has been Rappler Talk. Thank you.